in the comments, if you guys could check in, just so I know who's on. And then the third thing is I put a pretty interesting article in the comments about Amazon, Walmart, and eBay, and just how price gouging and how they're kind of handling the price gouging situation with like toilet paper and hand sanitizer and stuff like that. So pretty cool read, something that we kind of talked about in the first unit. So you guys can check that article out later or whatever as we're going through this. So I wanted to take this time to talk about Unit 3 and go over some FRQs, and then after that, just any review questions or anything that you guys have for me, just post them in the comments. If you're not part of this class or whatever, right, we're reviewing Unit 3 for macroeconomics, so we're talking about fiscal policy, okay? Can you guys go ahead and check in for me, please? Just let me know who you are in the comments. All right, so let's go ahead and go over the first FRQ question. The first FRQ question is going to be question number 1 on the 2008 AP test, right? The release test. So let's go ahead and look at that question, all right? So what I'd like you guys to do is, some of this stuff you're not going to be able to answer, right? Because we haven't covered it. If you're in my class, right? Maybe you are in other classes, whatever. So if you can answer them, great. If not, you know, we'll get to that point, or we'll get to that where you'll be able to answer them, right? Also, if you guys could go ahead and pull out a sheet of paper, right? And start answering, is a question on FRQ 1 for 2008. It is question number 1. So you should be able to answer 1, and then 1B, 1C, and then just 1B and C for right now. And then we'll go over those together here shortly, right? So I'll give you guys a little bit of time to do that question, right? Again, for those of you guys that are joining us, what we're doing is we are in the description. You can just go ahead and click the first link, right? It's going to take you to the AP test, 2008 AP test. Just go ahead and answer question 1, and you are answering part B and part C of question 1, right? Give you guys about 1 more minute to get that. Does anybody have any questions about those so far? All right, let me start going over question number 1, or the first part, right? So assume that the U.S. economy is operating at full employment output, and the government has balanced the budget. A drop in consumer confidence reduces consumption spending, causing the economy to enter into a recession, right? So what is the impact of the recession on the federal budget? Well, let's see here. One, let's just draw that out just to make sure that we know. Anytime you can draw something out to make it a little bit easier for you guys to look at, be good. So you're going to draw an ADAS model, right? This is our LRAS, AD curve, AS curve, okay? Now, price level, real GDP, okay? Now, if there's a drop in consumer spending, what's going to shift? What are we going to shift? So in the comments, if you guys can go ahead and type in the comments what's going to shift. Are the comments not working? Is that maybe what the problem is? Well, okay. So what's going to shift, right, is consumer spending. Is remember that aggregate demand equals GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X N, right? And so because of that, right, if this goes down, right, we said dropping that, this is going to drop, right? Our aggregate demand curve is going to shift, and that'll shift to the left, right? And so now instead of being at a full employment gap, we're now at what's called a recessionary gap, right? Okay. Now, how is that going to affect the government? Well, it'll affect the government in the sense that people are not paying as much in taxes, right? So the federal budget, right, or the federal, like the money that the government gets, is going to be less, right? So that would be kind of an acceptable answer. All right. And I told you to answer question C. So one part C, right? And that is assume that the current real GDP product falls short of full employment output of 500 billion, and the marginal propensity to consume is 0.8, right? So calculate the minimum increase in government spending to bring this back to full employment. So where are we? Here we go. Okay, so if we want to, we are at here. And we need to label that, right? 500, okay? And let me read that question again. Okay, so this falls short of 500 billion, right? So the government needs to spend an amount, and we need to figure out the multiplier. Now, what is the multiplier? Remember, the multiplier is just going to be 1 over MPS, right? So 1 over MPS is going to give us the spending multiplier, right? And so it told us that the marginal propensity to consume is 0.8, right? So there's this right here. So if our MPC is 0.8, that makes our MPS 0.2, and that equals 1, right? So that's our MPS. So 1 over 0.2 is what, guys? Can you guys go ahead and write that in the comments? Did the comments not work? Maybe not. I don't know. Okay, well, hopefully they start working here soon. Anyway, that's going to be 5, right? So our multiplier, right, is 1 over 0.2. This equals 5. So since that's 5, you're going to multiply what value times 5 is going to is going to close this gap, right, between 500 and 1,000. That's going to be 100, right? So they just need to spend 100 billion to close this gap, right? So that's that question. You know what? If you guys want to use Remind, and you have a question, just hit me up on Remind. All right. And then let's see the second part. Assume that instead of increasing government spending, the government decides to reduce personal income taxes. Okay. Will the reduction in personal income tax required to achieve full employment be larger than or smaller than the government spending change you calculated in part? So I want to explain why. Okay. So we need the taxing multiplier for this, right? And so the taxing multiplier is MPC over MPS, okay? And so the taxing multiplier is always actually just going to be one less than the spending multiplier. So we should, just looking at the spending multiplier, know that it's going to be 4, right? But we can do the math right here too, right? So this is going to be what, 2.8, right? So that's going to be 4. So it's 1 less. So you actually need to cut taxes more to spend to close this gap, right? So what is that? 120 they're going to need to, or 125 they're going to need to close the gap, right? Cut taxes by $125, right? 125 billion. So that is more, right, than the multiplier, and so and the reason why is because the spending multiplier is like it's already counted, like it starts the spending right away, right? And so that's why you get it multiplied, and it has a bigger magnitude than, say, the taxing multiplier. The taxing multiplier doesn't, it takes like it doesn't hit the economy right away, right? So that answers that. Okay, now moving on to, there was that question, and okay, so moving on to the next free response, which is 2012. And so the question we were looking at for 2012 is going to be, okay, question number 3. Okay. Now, what I want you guys to do is open that up, right? If you don't already have it open or print it out, and go ahead and start answering question number 3. Okay. And give you guys a few minutes to kind of start working through it. What I'll do with it, so I put that article in. It's a real easy article to even Google. You just put Amazon, Walmart, and others battling price gouging. It's a pretty cool article. It just kind of talks about how they're getting rid of third parties price gouging right now, and how a lot of price gouging is actually happening by marketing like COVID-19 specific face masks and COVID-19 specific Germ-X that'll kill that stuff, right? So that is no, Jonah, I cannot see the chat. Oh, I cannot see the chat. Okay. Oh, well, for some reason it won't work on mine, but I'm over here on this one, which works fine. Good, Jackie. Sorry, that's a little delayed. It's just I'm seeing the comments now. So we're going to go ahead and look at the the second link for the third question, right? And that question is FRQ, or it's a 2012 free response, and it is question number 3, and it's talking about Anderson land. Okay. Everybody cool on that one? All right. So let's look at. Yeah, you guys busted me there, huh? Yeah, I'm wearing a polo with shorts. Jonah, mind your own business. All right, let's look at this. Assume the economy of Anderson land is in long run equilibrium with full employment. In the short run, nominal wages are fixed. Okay. So we should be able to understand that comment just a little, or that statement a little bit, because remember that real is equates for inflation, right? And nominal does not equate for inflation. So that's the same for wages, right? Even though maybe if we haven't specifically covered that, that's covered in that we know what real and nominal means, right? So, okay. So let me get over here. Okay. All right. Now draw a correctly labeled graph of short run aggregate supply, long run aggregate supply, aggregate demand, and show the following. Now it's really important, guys. What you guys need to be doing at home, right, is you need to be drawing this stuff out, because I can assure you that this is like a perfect, the ones that I pulled to this one before and this one right now are like perfect examples of what they'll ask you on the AP test, because you have to explain the answer, and you have to explain the answer by what happens in the graph, right? So I think this would be something that would be like perfect for this type of AP test, where they're only looking at this and making sure that you have a full understanding of the course, right? Because think about that. They're going to give you 3 questions to see if you understand everything from the course. So it's got to be something that draws from the entire course, right? So that question that we just went over for 2008, there was some other components that you needed to do, and that showed like from different units, right? So that's what I think they should do, or that's what I think might happen, right? So, okay, so let's go ahead and start this, right? All right, so it asks you to do an ADAS model, right? And it is asking for it at full employment. And it wants price level equilibrium at PL sub 1, and it wants output at PL sub L, Y sub 1. Okay, so you guys can see this. This is what you should have on your paper. Again, on the horizontal axis, you're going to have price level. On the vertical axis, you're going to have price level. On the horizontal, you have real GDP. You'll have your downward sloping aggregate demand curve. You'll have your upward sloping aggregate supply curve, your long run aggregate supply curve, and then it asks you to label your output at Y sub 1 and your price level equilibrium at PL sub 1, right? So we can see that all happening right there, right? Now, if you don't have this, right, get this drawn on your paper real quick, right? All right. Now, assume there's an increase in exports from Anderson land. On your graph, show the effects of higher exports on on the equilibrium in the short run, labeling a new equilibrium price Y sub 2 and then PL sub 2 respectively. Okay, so remember that AD equals GDP equals C plus I plus G plus XN. Okay, so since there's an increase in XN, right, because that's exports, stuff that we're sending out of the country, right? So we're making money off of that, right? That's increasing our GDP. Since there's an increase in that, that's going to shift our aggregate demand curve to the right, right? So this puts us in a what type of gap? What type of gap is that? If you guys can in the comments answer that, please. Yeah, it's going to be what's called an expansionary gap or inflationary gap, right? Either of those two terms will work, right? And so now, based on your, so that answers part B, right? If you have this right here, right? Make sure everything's labeled correctly. Then based on your answer in part B, what impact on higher exports on real wages in the short run? Explain. So what does that mean? Remember that wages in the short run are sticky, right? So that means that wages will stay the same, right? Price levels will increase, but because we're in the short run, wages will stay the same. And then as a result of the increase in exports, export-oriented industries in Anderson's land increase expenditures on new container ships and equipment. Okay, so what component of aggregate demand will change? On part D, I, what do you guys think that is? Again, we're looking for the answer for part D, I, okay, which was what component of aggregate demand will change when there's a result in increase in exports, export-oriented industries. So as a result of the exports, right, businesses or export-oriented industries start to increase expenditures on new container ships and equipment. So which one? Yeah, Jonah, that's correct. Why I? Because it's investment, right? Business investment. These businesses are going out and they're making their business better, right? So they're buying these new shipping containments, most likely taking out loans for those, right? And that's going to increase GDP even further, right? Because you have these companies that are spending more, right? And so because of that, you get a further increase of is that you're going to have it shift to the right, okay? Why are you going to have it shift to the right? Well, you're going to have it shift to the right because you have more capital stock, right? Anytime you have more capital stock, right, you shift your long-run aggregate supply curve to the right. If you have less capital stock, right, then you would shift it to the left, okay? And so that answers question 3D II. That's how you say that, right? Okay. Now, let's see. Next one we want to go over is 2006. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make this the last one that we do, okay, for today. Just cut it a little short today, and then just any questions that you guys might have for the review or anything that you think that we need to cover for the review, remembering that the test is on Monday, right? So go ahead and open up 2006 and work on question number 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and start going over this. All right. Assume that the U.S. Economy is currently operating at an equilibrium below full employment. Okay, so what is full employment on the ADAS model? All right, well, full employment on the ADAS model, right, is always going to be at your long run aggregate supply curve, right? So that'll show us full employment. All right. So anytime you're on this curve, you're at full employment, right? If you're to the right of it, you're at a peak or an expansionary or inflationary period, right? If you're below it, you're in a recession or recessionary period or or in a trough, right? So this is saying that we were below full employment, right? So we have less full employment, so that means we're going to be in a recessionary gap, right? This indicating a recessionary gap. We've labeled our equilibrium price point, right, or price level, and our output at y sub 1. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and go to. So that takes care of question 1a sub I and sub double I. And then now let's look at 1b. So now assume there's a significant increase in the world price of oil and major production input for United States. So show on your graph in part A how the increase in the oil price affects which of the following in the short run. Okay, so which one is that going to affect? That's a resource, right? So since it's a resource, remember that our shifters for aggregate supply are RAP, right? So resource price, actions of the government, or production, right? So that's going to shift our aggregate supply curve to if there's a more expensive, right? That means it's going to shift it to the left. Okay, so then what happens? We are actually in a further inflationary gap, and this is actually something that we should refer or talk about, right? And we have talked about this. This is called stagflation, right? And so output is less, right? Did I read that question right? Let me just look at the question again. Hold on, guys. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's going to cause stagflation, right? And stagflation, remember that we have a stagnant economy and that price levels are increasing, right? So since an input for a lot of things is gasoline, right? Like to move goods and services or goods in within our country, right? Increase price. So since there's an increase in price levels, then the economy is not doing as well. So we're experiencing stagflation, right? So we would explain that we have a drop in output, and we have an increase in price levels, right? So resulting in stagflation. All right. Now, given your answer, explain what will happen to unemployment in the United States in the short run. Well, what's going to happen to unemployment in the short run, right? Well, the further and further we get away from the full employment curve, right? What's going to happen to unemployment? It's going to decrease and further decrease, right? And since we're in the short run, wages are sticky, right? They're not going to drop wages and more people are going to get into the market, or they're not going to increase wages and more people are going to get into the market, right? So because of that, you'd get a higher level of unemployment. Okay. And then, all right. D, we can't answer just yet because we haven't covered that. And E, we can't answer as well because we haven't covered those two parts. Now, that's good to keep in mind and to look out for because I think, again, for them to really capture if you understand everything in this class and to be fair about giving you college credit for this class, they've got to ask you a question that's going to be across the board, right? You're going to have to run like all the units to make sure that you understand what's the scope of the class, right? So now I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to any questions that you guys have. What do you mean nothing, Jonah? Oh, that you were responding to a question I had. Anyway, well, whatever. I think if you have any questions, especially about the test that's going to be coming up or anything, I would definitely know the different equations, different multipliers. And so the different multipliers are going to be, and that's spending, MPC over MP. There's tax. And then 1 equals MPC plus. Okay, I would definitely have those down because you're going to be using those quite a bit, right? Now, yeah, sorry, Jonah. No, more people would, on that question, more people would, since we moved further and further away from the long run aggregate supply curve, that increases your unemployment rate. So unemployment would get higher, right? So, all right. Other things that you should know is, of course, the ADAS model. I would know how to manipulate that. There's going to be multiple choice questions, and then I'm going to do an FRQ for you guys. That FRQ is going to be something that we've probably covered or something that you guys haven't seen yet. But to give you guys some practice, and probably have you guys take a picture of it and submit it in that way. Okay. Also, you guys need to make sure that you're working on the module quizzes. This week, last week was 12 and 13, right? And this week is 14 and 15. Are there any questions? All right, guys. Well, if you guys don't have any questions for me, go ahead and use that remind. Ask me anything on remind, for about the review, so that I can, or about the test. But I should have that up and running for you guys, or I will have it up and running for you guys on Monday. I'll give you guys some time to do it, so it won't be due on Monday, but like maybe I'll give you like 2 or 3 days to do it. The test, however, will be timed. I will give you like maybe a minute and a half per question, depending on how many questions I plan on giving you. I think I have a bank of 40, and I'll probably just assign you guys 10 questions each and just randomize the questions so everybody gets kind of a different test to make the test a little bit more authentic. Okay. So if there's no questions, nope. All right, guys. Hope you guys are all doing well. Miss you guys, and make sure you guys are washing your hands and doing that social distancing, right? The test is on Monday, Nick, and I'll give you guys a few days to do it. Like I'll probably give you until Wednesday to have it completed. Okay. Make sure that you guys are doing the 2 module quizzes a week, right? So this week would be 14 and 15. All right, guys. Peace.